17. Sign plan. Okay. Do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of approval of the minutes from the February 10th meeting, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Now we'll take a motion on the March 3rd work session minutes.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor of approval of the minute meetings from the March 3rd, please signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to let you know, there are some other work session minutes that are floating out there. They did not make the agenda for this meeting. Some of our minutes from earlier this week will be available and on the next meeting, regular meeting agenda.
Okay.
We're missing some January and February minutes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll take a look at approval of those at our next session. Do we have any questions or concerns related to military operations? Anybody online?
No, sir.
Thank you. We'll move on to new business and we'll start with annexation. Would staff please present?
So good evening, dear Planning Commission members. I'm going to start with the first new business item, which is a annexation request at 3492 Trask Parkway, also referred to as US Highway 21. This map shows the location of this tract of land, which is located actually right on the edge of Albergati Creek. And US 21 Trask Parkway. It's roughly 2.8 acres in size, currently wooded, undeveloped. It is within the county. It's not part of the city of Beaufort. Therefore, it has a county zoning classification for S1, which is an industrial zoning district within the county. There are on the north other tracts within the county that are also zoned industrial along Trask Parkway, also going towards the city. Also, we have a lot of industrial zoned parcels going south as well. We've got some residential developments, mobile home communities to the west of that, northwest. So looking at the zoning map for the city, we have actually right adjacent to this piece of land, two or actually three parcels of land that are currently zoned regional mixed use. One is a Parker's gas and convenience station at Trask Parkway, at the corner of Trask Parkway and Cavalry, I think is the road, Rosada Road. As well as a warehouse right to the north of it. On the other side of the highway, that's where the Marine Corps Air Station starts. So that's military reservation. The floodplain elevations map shows kind of diverse elevations on this piece of land. We've got the orange shaded is upland, so it's a third of upland. Then we've got some gray shaded, which is kind of floods 20%. And then we've got along the Albergati Creek, of course, we're in the flood zone there. Looking at the street view, so traveling down Trask Parkway, US 21, you can see currently trees, it's wooded. There's a billboard, a licensed SCDOT licensed billboard sign in place. And that's about it. So the petition is for this piece of land, this tract of land to be annexed into the city, to be used as either a passive or an active park, and to be owned by the beautiful, what's it going to call it? The beautiful Beaufort Open Land Trust. Also, if you look at the map, I'm going to go back, you can tell on the western edge, it's right adjacent to the Spanish Moss Trail. So the Spanish Moss Trail runs right by it as well. So you've got the Spanish Moss Trail and you've got Albergati Creek. So in summary, staff would recommend approval for the annexation request to bring it into the city under a T1 natural preserve zoning district, which is the city's zoning district, the least dense zoning district for park use, for multiple reasons. One is coming from the comprehensive plan from 2021. It's a prime natural resource. The comp plan talks about the character, quality of life, the economy, the sense of place that such pieces of land would preserve. It's linked to the waters and the natural environment, which are very, characteristic for this area, being Albergati Creek. It's right before the bridge crossing over. The Civic Master Plan actually talks about the Spanish Moss Trail, so it could help with connectivity, creating opportunities, recreational opportunities, as well as for eventual maybe daily commuters into the city of Beaufort using that trail. There's also an open space master plan that the city has from 2010. And the objectives of the open space plan are actually all fulfilled when it comes to this piece of land. So preserve open space within the city of Beaufort from the increasing pressure of rapid development, to protect and expand view corridors, protect critical habitats, maintain or increase existing biodiversity with special emphasis on rare, threatened, and endangered species, minimize degradation to water quality, increase public access to water, as well as to alternative non-motorized transportation such as walking and bicycling, which would be the trail. So we're in favor.
Thank you. Questions from staff?
I have a question about the billboard. You mentioned it's in the SDOT licensed billboard. Is it in an easement area? And is that a sign that has any potential to be regulated by the city?
Well, it's regulated because it's licensed under the state SCDOT.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if it's in the right of way. I would assume so. That's why it's licensed under the state, right? Correct. So it would be, it would stay there if we bring it into the T1 natural preserve zoning district as a legal non-conforming signage. But they wouldn't be able to make any improvements as such. So it would be basically like being grandfathered into this. So it would be kept in place basically under this T1.
Okay, and
Yeah.
does that sign generate revenue? I mean, who gets the money? Is it the property owner? Is it the DOT? Is it who?
I don't know. That's probably a good question for the property owner if he's
Okay,
here. I don't know.
Is that billboard actually on the property?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. It could be still in the right of way of it, so I can't answer that. I don't know. Kurt, do you know? Yeah, we'll defer that to the applicant.
Would you have to shoot that in to find out whether it's on the property or not?
Sure.
And if it is on the property, then would it be removed? Or it would still stay irrespective of
It would-
whether it's on
it
the
would still
easement
stay,
or the
yeah.
property?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to state for the record, the applicant is a second cousin of mine. I have no interest in the property, financial or otherwise. I see no reason that I can't deliberate on the matter.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions from board?
Yes. Chris, on the findings of the staff under C, suitability of the property that would be affected by the amendment. It's over on the right-hand side on your analysis. It says the property is preserved as open space / view shed. What does that mean?
Well, it's basically if we protect this as a open space, piece of open space that wouldn't be developable and developed, it would kind of protect that view shed coming, like traveling down Trask Parkway, traveling south towards the city. You're right there at that before you cross over the bridge, so those views would be protected. So if you're like traveling into the city,
So view shed refers.
view
to
shed, like
protect-
looking in, like towards Albergati Creek and the Salt Creek. So that entire view shed around that parcel of land would be protected by that, or it would help protect that. Let's put it that way. By not making it a piece of developable land. So, yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Mike, I have a couple.
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
the applicant is online, just so you're aware.
Who'll maintain the property and at what cost? How will the property be cared for if the city takes it on as a?
Well, the ownership will be actually transferred into an open land trust, which was created. It's called the Beautiful Beaufort Open Land Trust, and it will be officially owned by such.
And they'll maintain the property. The city will not be responsible for maintaining the property in any way?
Yeah.
Okay.
As of now, we don't have any maintenance agreements or anything in place. It's probably a question for the applicant too, if he's online. but,
And then
Yes,
what
yes.
kind of improvements are being envisioned for the Spanish Moss to tie into the Spanish Moss Trail?
Well, I mean, just jump to the petition. So the petition for the annexation talks, or the property owner talks about basically, like, when we met with Mr. Trask, his intent was to bring it into the city for a passive park use. So either with the city or with the Friends of the Spanish Moss Trail. So I think there's nothing set in stone as of now, but there are, various options that could be undergone.
You
So-
could have, it could be accessed from the Spanish Moss Trail by the bikers.
Well, it could be made a trailhead for the Spanish Moss Trail. If there's interest in opening that up and making it the Spanish Moss Trail accessible through that property, there could be like a parking lot maybe for recreational purposes so that people could actually park their vehicles with the bikes and then jump on the bike and jump on the trail from there. Or maybe,
I don't think that'll ever happen. I have been up and down the Spanish Moss Trails more times than I can count. And just north of here, not too far, there's already a parking lot right on Rosita Road. There's a parking lot right there. I
Right.
can't imagine anybody actually doing anything on this parcel except zooming right by it as fast as you want to go.
okay, yeah. There are options, let's just put it that way. There are options, but there's nothing set in stone as of now.
So-
What kind of options? Yeah.
So as I understand what you're saying, this is like step one of some kind of a plan to change the zoning, sell it or give it to the Beautiful Beaufort. And then step two sounds like your phrase was bring it into the city somehow. I don't know if that
But-
means a donation or a sale, or do you know anything about that?
bringing it into the city by annexing it into the city limits of Beaufort and attaching a city zoning district onto it. Because currently it's industrially zoned, so there's no intent of pursuing any industrial commercial development. So yeah.
Well, for example, if it were to be, if the property, if Beautiful Beaufort gets it, this zoning and annexation passes, if they were then to donate it to the city, or try to donate it to the city for a park, at that point, that would involve city maintenance responsibilities. Would that be accurate?
If the city is interested,
Mhm.
but
But none of that's
that's, I mean,
part of this.
yeah, that would take a council action, but we haven't really approached the city per se with this, or, yeah. I'm not sure if I think it's still very vague in what is planned for this, but generally, the intent is to keep it preserved as a park or a natural preserve, basically. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a good annexation. The property this would preserve the property as a green space in perpetuity, is consistent with the comprehensive plan. I see an overwhelming good and no harm in this annexation. So those are my comments.
Yeah, let's save some of the board comments until after we get through our public comment. And I want to say to the staff, this very excellent presentation. I like the way you put it together. It's very well presented. I appreciate that very much. So with that, we'll ask the applicant if they'd like to come forward and make their presentation.
Yes, sir. The applicant is online.
Can you
Hi,
fix it so we can see the applicant on our screens? Because
Uh,
we can't right now.
If he enables video, he doesn't have video on.
Okay.
I am happy to, can you hear me?
Yeah, could you
Yeah.
please state your name and address for us, please?
Sure, it's Graham Trask, 1211 Bay Street, Beaufort, South Carolina, 29902. I'm happy to put my video on, but I don't see it as an option unless,
Here, let me,
yeah.
I'm going to invite you to, as a panelist, you'll briefly leave and you'll join back in. You should have full ability to use your camera. Okay, give me 1 second.
All right, can you see me now?
There you go.
Yes, thank
There we
you.
go.
Hi. Thanks for having me on. Thanks to Chris and Kurt and the team in the planning department for guiding me through this annexation. I'm actually representing Beautiful Beaufort Open Land Trust. And I hope to clarify a few things that came up. The property has been deeded to Beautiful Beaufort Open Land Trust. It is an organization which is committed to preserving property in the Low Country as parks, as preserves, as natural space, natural open space. The land will not go to the city. The land will be held in perpetuity by the Open Land Trust, as any open land trust does. It will be maintained by the Open Land Trust. All costs associated with that maintenance, insurance, property taxes, maintenance will be borne by the Open Land Trust. The rationale for bringing it into the city is, as Chris said, certainly consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, civic master plan, open space strategy, consistent with what the city council stated they wanted to do in their strategy session in February. It is bordered to the east by the city. It's bordered to the north by the city. We're allowed to put an industrial building there, 20,000 square feet. It's been owned, just as background and just for your information, it's been owned by my family for 80 years. It has been contemplated to be a car lot, an industrial building, commercial space. And my father has finally come to the decision that it really needs to be a park. And so we are very comfortable with that. We are hoping that you look favorably on this to annex it into the city. We appreciate working with the city, although perhaps some recent news events might belie that. But the fact is, we do like working with the city. There were some questions about the billboard. The billboard is on the property. The billboard has been there since 1968. It does generate income, and that income will help maintain this property, as well as help maintain some of the other parcels that this organization will undoubtedly receive as gifts. It will, as Chris said, come in as a non-conforming structure, and then have to abide by the city's rules. As far as the connection to the Spanish Moss Trail, you're right. Initial indications were that this was the only area where it could be a trailhead, but the gentleman who spoke about the Spanish Moss Trail is right. There is a trailhead very near to there. As far as what the park might look like, that is open for discussion. It's certainly something I have discussed with Dean Moss of the Spanish Moss Trail, and he's very favorable to working with beautiful Beaufort to enhance this property and make it conducive to the Spanish Moss Trail. We're also very open to work with the city in that respect. But certainly we're not trying to put any cost onto the city. To the contrary, as I said, the beautiful Beaufort will maintain this property at its sole cost. I think I addressed all of those issues that were brought up, but I'm happy to answer any other questions or concerns that the board might have.
Thank you, Mr. Trask. Questions from the board or the applicant? You must have clarified everything well, Mr. Trask.
Thank you.
So I am going to open it up for public comment.
No hands raised, sir.
I guess we covered everything for the public as well. I'll turn it back over to the board for any discussion and or a motion.
I don't have any discussion. I think it's a great idea.
I think we should move to separate.
So I'll move to, do we need to do the annexation and the zoning separately, Kurt?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So I'll make a motion that the petition for annexation be granted.
I second.
I have a motion, and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
No.
Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote of approval and raising your hands. And it's unanimous for annexation. Now let's go to zoning.
I move that we change the zoning to T1.
Turn on your mic there.
I move that we change the zoning to T1 for the park area.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Trask.
Thank you. Thank you to the board. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And now we'll move to 1026 Rebo Road. Staff presentation for that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes,
I have a conflict on this item. My son owns a home on Oak Haven Street. I'm also a party to the note and mortgage on that particular house, and so I've sought counsel on the issue, and I'm afraid I'm gonna have to recuse myself on this one. So I've prepared a letter here I'd like to give you for the record.
thank you, Mr. Trask, and thank you,
That means I also have to leave the chamber, so I'll depart now.
thank you.
Is this the letter?
Yeah.
Okay,
If you wouldn't mind entering that into the record.
Sure.
Having,
do you want me to read it?
no,
Oh, okay.
I think it's
We'll
fine.
just make it a part, an exhibit to the
We'll just
minutes.
make it part of the record.
Yeah,
Okay, so this is a preliminary plat at 1026 Rebo Road. It's, I guess, been in review and had many hearings, I think, before the old MPC were turned into the planning commission. Here's the location roughly. It's, I guess, kind of southwest of the corner of Allison Road and Rebo Road. Most of it used to be a old mobile home park, I guess, for people that have been here a while. You can see that it comprises a number of zoning districts, but the majority is T5 UC, so that's the dark, or T5 UC is the dark gray. You also see some T4N and a tiny little bit of T3S that's on this property. And around it, you can see on Rebo Road is also T5 UC. So the T5 UC district, just so everybody is aware, is our densest district. Allows up to 5-story dwelling units, a mixture of uses in that district, whereas the T4 is a little smaller, that's a little lower density. That's kind of a 4-story building. Less uses are allowed, but more of a kind of apartments, mixed use, multifamily kind of district. And then the T3S is a suburban residential district. So that's kind of individual lots, just a single family home. So you can see that to the west of it and to the south of it is essentially a T3S, a suburban residential pattern and zoning there. Whereas the Rebo Road and towards the hospital is all high density, kind of mixed use. So, it allows commercial as well. Floodplain maps. So this is in an X zone, but one thing to note, if you can see it on there, it's kind of hard to see, is that some of the property kind of in the very middle has elevations as low as 7 feet. So it's kind of collecting essentially all the water in that area, just so everybody understands. This is the street view. So I think everybody probably passes this all the time here, but you can kind of see some of the open curb cuts. But again, it's kind of on that right-hand side as you're traveling south on Rebo Road, and you see the mobile home park. It's obviously well forested right now, so as everybody passes by it. The proposed plan is on this slide. So you can see 72 units that are proposed. The majority of them, except for just, I think, actually 6 units are in townhouses. So single family attached townhouses that I understand are for sale. Obviously, you can ask the developer or the applicant when they come up here, but really the only properties that are duplexes are the properties in red. I think that's 67 and 68, kind of on the out western portion of the screen, and then the very bottom of the screen when you see lane A, those two duplexes as well. Everything else, the remainder is all a single family attached townhouse that's recommended. And you can see, basically they're all front loaded with alleys or a street, um, basically as access. Okay, and I think does everybody have their bearings here where this all is located? Hopefully so. So you can kind of see that corner, used for parking right now by the hospital kind of on the other side of the road. And then Oak Haven Street, would connect to, this proposal. This is the plat itself. As I was stating, this would connect to Oak Haven Street. It is a 50-foot right of way. It's a state-owned road, surprisingly. The rest, there's a Myrtle Street that's basically an undedicated right of way right now in the city that would kind of provide the north-south connection to this property. Then the east-west connection would go to Oak Haven, and it would all, it will not tie into Rebo Road. And then it'll all come out onto Allison Road, to the north there. So that's a signalized intersection at Allison Road, just so everybody understands. And the city just completed some major improvements on Allison Road in the last few weeks. And all of the kind of the dark that you see on the screen, that's alley. So that'll be owned by the applicant. So again, all these roads that they're proposing are owned by the applicant, but the alleys, are, basically a little different there. But hopefully everybody understands all that. And then landscaping and trees, it's not showing up super well, but the project's proposing to retain a good portion of the mature trees that are out there. I think you saw in that picture. I'll just kind of show this here. With obviously trails, and then maybe a little easier to see on this overall sketch. But all of those trees will be, majority of the trees will be retained. They would not have to mitigate under our current code for cutting down on those trees because of the amount of tree canopy that they're preserving. There's a few things to note about this plan. A is that in the T5 UC district, there is a requirement that essentially buildings are supposed to front the street. Staff has kind of worked with the applicant to preserve that area that is treed that you can see on this picture as basically a commonly owned plot of land that'll be preserved as open space and park area. That's again, private park area and open space. It has trails that you can see on the screen, and I'll just show that a little over here. You can see where the trails kind of go into that area. So in lieu of having the buildings in that T5 UC up against the street, that'll instead be park area in that lot. So the townhouses on Allison Road will front the street. And then the rest of the townhouses will also front the street with, again, the parking, and the garages on the rear that are served by an alley. So looking at this, this came before you, I guess about 4 years ago now. There's a sketch plan to the MPC. That's when it was a joint planning commission with the Port Royal, and the county. It was approved. One of the conditions of approval is that any future platting action, like the preliminary plat, which currently does not go to the planning commission, but the current proposed ordinance would put back into your purview. But with that approval, one of the conditions that would come back to you. But this sketch plan was approved for essentially a very mixed use development. You can see the layout here and how it's somewhat similar to the layout, but there's some major changes. And so those major changes that you see from that approved sketch plan are kind of in the center. You have a major area of parking that was to be split between the medical office and the hospital. Then there's medical offices on the exterior that's not part of this request. That's owned by a different entity, I think, since that request was approved by the sketch plan. So that sketch plan was a different developer and a different entity. That whole northeast portion is not part of this. However, the parking was in that centerpiece. So that parking is no longer going to be just parking. It's now townhouses, as you can see here on this screen. So that makes sense to everybody. You can see that that row of townhouses that used to be mostly parking has been kind of swapped. On the northwest corner, there was also a lot of overflow parking and a small or about 5,000 square foot commercial building or office building, medical building that was proposed on the northwest quadrant of Allison Road that has also been removed. You can kind of see that here. So that's now going to be townhouses. So again, a major reduction in density from what was approved in the past. So all of that commercial, medical office, and all of that overflow parking, which from what I understand from looking at the minutes, was really to serve the hospital, which is across, cat-a-corner across the street. Over 250 spaces has all been removed, and instead, the townhouses that you see that were essentially envisioned before in that sketch plan have been replaced those uses. And you can see in that former sketch plan, there was, the planning commission 4 years ago also kind of agreed with, instead of putting the buildings right up against the street, reserving that for a park, and that's been basically retained. And the retention pond has been retained basically in the same area, whereas that northwest quadrant is now townhouses and those 2 duplexes. So another main difference is the Oak Haven Street connection that went out to Rebo Road has been removed. And so, and this was the previous plan that came to the Planning Commission and the DRB in 2019. Again, this was a T5 UC. And so it allows, 5-story apartments. This was what was seen then. And so you can see that this has evolved and quite a bit in the last 7 years. From some very high density commercial office, medical office, and apartment complex to a much lower density. And here's the previous one that, even a lot of parking and medical office to a much lower density development of all single family attached townhouses and just the 1, 2, 3 duplex buildings. And so in that process, I know I've listed kind of the changes that have been going on through our TRC process that we've done with the developer. And you have some record of that, but I think I'd just like to note some major changes since this has finally come to you. I know this has been pulled from the agenda the last few meetings, and this is a completely different request than that was put on. And those were all old requests that, have no bearing anymore. But the main things are the connection there to Rebo Road. So there was a TIA done, I think, when this was previously submitted. That was updated. It was sent to SCDOT. Rebo Road's a state road, right? And so the DOT approved that TIA, and then that was updated with new numbers in 2024, kind of more of a minor update. The state actually approved this with full access onto Rebo Road. And, staff working with the developer thought that, because that's only about 315 to 320 feet away from a signalized intersection, it seemed like that was maybe not necessary and perhaps unsafe. There's also some concern from the neighbors to the west in those suburban development pattern off of Oak Haven that would perhaps provide full cut-through traffic and extra traffic on their street, which again is only 50 foot of right of way, and it's rather narrow. I would say that'd be difficult to fit 2 cars at one time down Oak Haven. So that was pulled, and those were basically turned into a park and townhouse units instead of the proposed 4-plex that used to be on there. And so staff feels like that's a much better design and much safer for basically the public and all residents that live in this, would live and potentially live in this area, to come out in a signalized intersection and also give the secondary access for fire as well off of Oak Haven, which is a state right away. But Second, there was some questions about stormwater. That obviously, removing the street helped with stormwater, and I'm happy to say that this is now Soloco compliant under their guidelines for stormwater. The city did a number of improvements on Allison Road that helped this project, and I think the developer was kind of waiting on those improvements before this project came before you, but that's been resolved. Before we had some different plans for where the duplexes are and that fourplex I talked about, those have all been resolved. Those are now rear loaded parking. And they've also lowered the density on those projects. And so pretty much every issue has been resolved that staff had an issue with as this came, I guess the new project came last year. So, again, this has got a lot of hair on it, right? It's been through the process a number of times. It's been through the planning commission a number of times. But in the last year, we've had a number of meetings and the developer is, and the applicant has made all the changes that we request. And so really all that's left for the city is really just a thought that on the southwestern portion of this property, there's an alley that's got maybe just 2 or 3 feet. It's hard to see on that slide, but it might be easier to see right here on this, on kind of the right part. There's no cursor, but if you see on the right-hand side of that landscape plan, there's an alley that kind of abuts that subdivision. I guess we would just recommend that you consider putting like a landscape screen or a fence or some kind of screening on that portion where there's not a tree, just, basically fronting that townhouse and for the betterment of the, not the betterment, but for the protection of the lot adjoining to it. Also, staff's recommending, now again, this is a recommendation. Our code has this, some of these sections is T5UC, which allows 5-story uses, right? It allows 5-story buildings, but we're recommending in your packet, just like basically a few blocks that the developer think about, at least for the end units that you can kind of see on the screen. Actually, the thing I'm talking about on that right-hand side, if those end units can at least be 2 stories to kind of better align with the 1 and 2 story nature, mostly 1-story nature of the property to the west of it. Again, that would be a recommendation and something that the applicant would have to agree to, but we just think for those few properties that would, I think, serve, just to kind of meld these 2 properties together better. But otherwise, I think the applicant's done an excellent job on really designing a lower density product that I think really takes into account, that kind of pattern of uses where we get to a higher use to the street and a lower use that's already in existence, and also taking into consideration preserving trees and the safety really of removing that access and putting the traffic onto a signalized intersection instead. I think that's really a benefit. And with that, staff would recommend approval on this, and I think that's about. And one more thing is we did get a letter from I think the Coastal Conservation League, who's here. They can. I think that all went to all of you. I'm sure they can, represent their case on that. But staff would recommend approval just with some kind of landscape screen or something on that little portion on that alley there. In fact, I need to read what lot that is. And then the recommendation that those end units on the lots that is in your packet be kind of recommendation to ask the developer when it's their turn to speak, if they would agree to that condition, that those be 2 or 2.5 story units. With that, I'll leave it over to you. So.
Thank you, Kurt. I'll leave it to turn it over to the board for questions for staff. Yes.
So just, I have a number, Kurt. So am I correct here, first of all, that this was the plan, this one that says September 21, this was the one that was previously the sketch plan that was.
Yeah, the one on the screen.
Then,
That's what was approved. So that's what we're going off of today. So you approved that sketch plan, and that's why this is at a preliminary plat stage.
So
Now, we're operating under the existing code, not the new code, so,
That's correct.
so my first one is, it's lovely, the new plan is a lovely plan, but let's just try to get to that point. The old plan had much different uses. I mean, there were half the number of residential uses and then a bunch of office uses, right? And so.
Yeah, the flip is parking and medical office uses, especially, but
So,
mostly overflow parking on this.
so, you know, a TIA is gonna look at, levels of service based on
Trips per
trips.
unit.
And the traffic generation is gonna be exactly the opposite for office as it is for residential.
Yes, it's
Residential
dramatically
leaves in the
higher.
morning and office comes in the morning. So whatever TIA was done is, it's irrelevant to what there is now. And I thought we were gonna always see these TIAs going forward because while we can have your conclusions, this could be of any project. This one appears to be a good one, but going forward, I was hoping that we'd always get to see the TIAs, so we could look at the levels of service ourselves and actually know whether the level of service is A, B, C, D, or F, and we don't know that. All it says is that the report says that intersections should continue to function adequately. So first I would just say, what level of service are they operating at now versus build condition? And that would be in the TIA.
Yeah, I'll defer to the applicant, but, you know, I didn't think to put that whole thing in their packet, and I can do that so from now on, but
And the only thing I really need, because 90% of those pages is all the calculations. If you just give us a page or page that has the listing of all the relevant intersections and the levels of service with the actual seconds of delay. I mean, we can look at it really quickly, but that pretty much tells the whole story.
sure.
And that then allows us to be in a position whereby, not that we don't respect SCDOT and county engineering, but at least it allows us to look at it and make our own determination whether we think there need to be, for example, signal timing differences or something like that, such that we could then ask the input of those agencies as to how they came to the determinations they did. So we don't have that today, so that's, it's going forward, maybe today it won't be important, but going forward, it's really important for us to see that stuff. Not the entire report, because I don't know of anybody except the engineering department that would ever be.
Yeah, I mean, I think my hesitancy is, you know, it's an engineering report, right? And, you know, the conclusions are usually best based on an engineer, but it did not trigger anything. But we certainly can provide it from now on.
I know, but we've had those discussions, I think, at length when we were talking about traffic, and this commission was talking about all sorts of concerns they had about traffic. Well, we can't address any of those concerns going forward. Don't at least have the level of service page or pages, and it's usually 1 or 2 pages max.
Sure. We can provide them, but I can tell you from reading it that this is a dramatic reduction from what SCDOT approved. I mean, a dramatic reduction in traffic, so.
Then, as to the, what this is actually labeled, under the existing code, we call our level of review of the sketch plan, not necessarily of the preliminary plat. So I'm just curious about that, because the way we've proposed revisions to the code, we've basically gotten rid of the sketch plan. We go directly after a sketch plan that we don't even prove up or down. We go to the preliminary plat. Under the existing code, we see the sketch plat and then the preliminary plat. Isn't that usually done at your level? But this would be a revised sketch plan. And then further, in conjunction to that, how do we in conjunction with that, how do we evaluate things like heights of building if we don't even have the elevations of the building, which are part of our site plan review process?
Okay, well, let me try to answer. So currently, yeah, it's somewhat complicated. Currently, the planning commission approves the sketch plan.
Right,
doesn't really have any conditions or
yeah.
submittals that really were required. It's basically at your discretion is the best way I can explain it. And it seems to be very sketch. This is the kind of sketch, I think, that's pretty illustrative compared to other sketches, but, that sketch plan, after that sketch plan is approved, the current code would have it approved by staff. And then that would provide the landscaping, the TIA, the plating that we just presented. However, when you adopted this, and those are 5-year, 2-year approval with 5 1-year renewals. So essentially a 7-year approval. So that's, the current sketch plan has some more time on it, before it would have to come back to you. So the proposed change you would be seeing the sketch plan, and then you would also approve the preliminary plat. However, as you can see, 2021, you put a condition on it that the preliminary plat come to you for approval.
Okay, so this is really a revised, because we're operating under the old code, or the existing code. The existing code, we would have to approve I guess, a revised sketch plan, and then because of the condition, the preliminary plat will go under the existing code, because city council hasn't adopted yet. We would ordinarily at this point be at the preliminary plat stage, right?
I think you would, because I mean,
Is it-
you know, your preliminary, the sketch, you haven't changed any of the major roadways.
all the
It's
lots?
hard to say, since we don't really have
You know, all the lot, I'm just trying to understand, because we're in that position where we're sort of thinking in terms of the new code, but we're still under the existing code until the
yeah, I mean,
council decides what to do with our
Don't-
recommendations.
yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to make sure we know what we're doing, and it seems to me that if you completely lot the whole thing differently, that's a revised sketch plan, but I don't care so much as long as.
I mean,
we call it the right thing.
you could take that a position, I think, because there are some changes. However, I think if you look at chapter 9, and I can't remember the section offhand, it's like 9.13, I think maybe, there's not really a lot to the sketch plan, or I think it's like really location of streets is really the main thing. So the question becomes like, you know, is this a revised sketch plan? Because it's essentially it's a much lower density sketch plan than it was before. I mean, typically I think it's up to, if you believe it should just be a revised sketch plan, that's fine. I mean, and then a preliminary plat, I mean,
Well,
I've thought about it. It's
Just
just,
to make sure we know what code we're operating under, that's all.
yeah, it's just hard to point to any section of the code to say that, the
So
sketch plan has,
so let me maybe
But
do it this way.
could I interrupt for just a
Let me,
second?
let me just finish one.
Okay.
If we call it a preliminary plat, then that means that it would be, we just call our approval, if we make a revised sketch plan and preliminary plat, then we've taken the authority on the preliminary plat from what would otherwise be under the existing code of staff approval, right?
yeah, you put that as a condition, and I think that's fair, but I think you have a point. You could, this is a change sketch plan. It has a much lower density, so you could do this as a revised sketch plan first, if
And then,
you
then the
feel
other
it
part of
necessary.
that whole question was and then because they don't submit their site plan today, which would be where they bring their building elevations and stuff, is that a separate step they plan to come?
Well, that-
Because we're now the design review board.
That would be incorrect, because they're proposing all single-family attached and duplexes, which are exempt from, they would just be like a house. It would be the same as a house submittal, so you would not see an elevation, even under the new code. Does that make sense?
No, under the,
Elevations above two levels.
So even site plans are only for multifamily structures and for commercial or
under the new,
structures.
well, okay, so under the new code, though, we did say we would start seeing.
You could request a theme, so that would be a change, but you still wouldn't be approving the elevation. You would just see a theme. You wouldn't be approving the elevations for each lot. Does that make sense? So for building code, duplex and a single family, a townhouse and a house is exempt from, is not a multifamily structure. So,
I just remember, Mr. Chairman, under the previous, the MPC, and we had a couple of these big ones like this. You particularly had a strong view architecture before we went forward and so.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the sketch plan is silent on whether you're gonna ask for that. The code that you recommended, but still hasn't been taken up by city council, has a section in it where you have that ability to look at draft elevations, not necessarily, and that's what I want to make clear, approve every individual lot. We had talked about that in length, and that would be retained at a staff level, because I think you could see the difficulty of this board was approving every single family lot.
I got that.
But, you know, that
Well-
is something you added, and that's a discretion. If you want to see elevation, I think you can ask the applicant, or you could require, but right now it's not clear in the code.
Thank you. That was good.
So,
Well, along that same line of thought, I would definitely think that this is a revised sketch plan. It has changed the roads. We're no longer are entering onto Rebo Road. And so we have changed the road configuration in that sense, along with the density that you're talking about too. This is a very significant corner, being right across from the hospital. Everybody's going to see this. And so I think it's important that we understand what the architecture is and how we're getting there. But I think this is a discussion I would like to have with the applicant. So instead, I'm going to turn it back over to the board for any other questions of staff.
Mike, I have a question.
Yes.
This is about the Oak Haven Road connection to Rebo, and I'm having a hard time agreeing with the staff decision that there shouldn't be a connection to Rebo. And I guess, for example, King, Prince, and North Street, you know, those are all connected to Rebo and they're less than 300 feet. So I'm kind of failing to understand the safety issue of this. And, you know, I thought we're trying to create, you know, smaller blocks in streets like these instead of creating almost like a suburban type street network with dead ends. So I just kind of want to
Yeah,
understand that.
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, Rebo Road is basically an arterial road and a highway. And typically those are large. You typically want like at least every jurisdiction at usually 500 or 600 feet of separation before you have, you know, I think from staff's opinion, or looking at this is, you know, there's no urban form here. And to put a full access onto Rebo Road creates somewhat of an unsafe traveling situation that's not going to change anytime in the foreseeable future. And especially when there's a safe signalized intersection that could be utilized. And I think that would be, I think that'd be foolhardy and dangerous, to be perfectly honest with you. And you know, we're not, you know, I think, again, we're not putting the buildings up against Rebo Road, we're preserving the trees. So I think essentially what I guess I'm getting at here is that this doesn't appear to be an urban, you know, environment. This is a high density arterial road meant for auto transportation, not meant for an urban, a more urban pattern where the cars are traveling at a lower rate. There's pedestrians. There is that block pattern that exists all around it. None of those exist and don't appear to be possible in the foreseeable future. So I think hopefully that makes sense. I think I'm pretty clear on that.
Other questions for staff?
Yes, and I want to make sure I understand this. Will you be able to exit this proposed development and head west on Oak Haven Street all the way over to Battery Creek Road?
Yeah, you could, let's just you know, it's connected to Oak Haven and Oak Haven.
So even though this drawing shows Oak Haven Road Street stopping, you're actually.
Yeah, that doesn't, I think there's just a tree in the way, but the plat, as you can see right here, shows the connection, on the screen.
Shows what? oh, it shows-
It's connected on the screen.
Okay, so it is connected. And on the, again, on this, along the south side of the site, along the west side of the site, I see a lot of green that I think is supposed to show trees. Are those trees that are already there that are going to be preserved, or is that a new planting?
I would defer to the applicant. There's a lot of trees out there and I don't think I mean, we have actually a landscape plan, but I don't think they show, they don't show the adjoining site's tree canopy. I mean, you can see it on the screen here. They just show the canopy, the trees that are existing on their site.
Because my concern is that we would build something that would be very, very tall, immediately adjacent to existing single-family homes. And I wouldn't want the people in those homes to come home one day and see, looking up into somebody's really big house. That's why I'm concerned about, that's something I would want to know. But the other thing is, in this proposed park and open space, I'm looking at on Google Maps an overhead of this right now, and there's a lot of thick trees there right along Rebo. But the park open space seems to show a lot of open green area. Does that mean some of those trees going to be cut down? Is all the understory there, all the brush, is that all going to be cleared out so that you'll be able to look through that?
You can
Anybody ask
kinda
that?
see here on.
Let me ask, did anybody ask that question?
Yeah, we did. I think they're preserving almost all the trees except for a few pines on the park and open space.
So all that green space would be inward from those trees.
Well, the purpose of keeping that as park and open space instead of the urban pattern, which would.
So is that yes or no?
Yes, would,
Okay, that's all.
was to preserve the trees.
Okay.
And then the recommendation was to consider, I think, the two stories next to those adjoining properties. So you can see that on your last page in red. But they'd have to agree to that. So when you call the applicant up, the code doesn't require, the code gives them up to 5 stories. They can only really self-inflict that upon themselves. You don't have the power to really place that condition on them. Does that make sense?
But I do have the power to say no, right?
You can say no to their plan. Yeah. So you just have to have good reason why. And I'm not sure that,
Well, we can make conditions to the
Yeah.
approval too, so.
but I think that's, you wanna,
The question I asked you earlier today about Oak Haven, did you get a chance to find out whether or not that road, existing road can support two-way travel?
I mean, I don't know that I have an engineer that can state that, but it's a 50-foot wide, state right of way.
Yeah, the right away, I think I just think the road would have. to
The
be
road looks pretty
upgraded.
narrow, so I don't know.
Which road are you talking about?
Okay.
It's the existing on Oak Haven.
Okay,
Comes off this way.
okay.
Okay, so that's,
Yeah,
We don't
I
know
think
whether
that would
Oak Haven
be,
is designed to carry the load. Traffic, whether it's in width and or in.
I would say that if you have some questions about that, that might be something you ask to be provided in a letter or memo on a TIA or something from a licensed engineer.
and that is a state-owned road though,
The
right?
state-owned road, yeah.
But when it comes to the end of, or the start of this, application, it would end being a state road and become
A private road
private road. Okay.
with a public access.
Who's
easement.
responsible for maintaining that road then?
So all of the roads that you're seeing here would be on the, whoever the end, if it's developer, if it's the neighborhood, essentially they're private.
You're talking about the one that's going out past Oak Haven?
No,
On
All
Oak
of the
Haven,
roads on the screen right here,
Oak Haven out.
except for
to-
Rebo and Allison okay,
Who's
would be.
responsible for the road?
That's a state road, I believe.
So everything on the property would be private.
So it's half private, half state. So the part of Oak Haven that's on the property would be private and would be, I'm assuming, maintained by the owners. I'm assuming there'll be a homeowners association. But as soon as you leave the site, it would be state.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
Yes. I have a couple questions. Question number one, the portion of the area that is not included in the proposed development, that odd-shaped parcel on the south west corner of Allison and Rebo, who owns that property now?
Well, you can see it right there on the screen. It's the hospital.
Hospital.
Okay, it is actually owned by them as opposed to leased or
This is
anything.
the plat, so you can see
Okay.
there are the items.
So, and on previous iterations of this proposed development, there was a mention of a parking garage to be constructed in that area. Has any application been made or approved for a parking garage in that spot?
No, I don't know that a garage was ever proposed. Let's just go to that. It was basically surface parking.
Okay.
So you had the last sketch plan had 250 spaces of on-street on-site, just regular paved parking.
The
Could
thing
be
that
used
was
for the hospital.
confusing me, Kurt, is the 2019 conceptual plan. It says right on there, future parking garage.
Oh, okay. And that obviously did not go forward.
Okay, and is there any kind of a development application in the pipeline right now for that pertains to that parcel that currently I drove by there today and went into it? It's flat parking for hospital employees right now.
Yeah, it's just parking right now. No, there's not.
Okay. And the other questions I had, just to clarify, some of the discussion we've had here, obviously we are working under the current code, not the new code. And there is no new code because it hasn't been approved by city council.
That's right.
There is a proposal on the table, and I think that's, just so we're not unclear about that. But the staff report here says specifically that the applicant is seeking preliminary plat approval, not sketch plan approval. It says preliminary plat approval. And the staff recommendation also alludes to preliminary plat approval. And I believe my understanding from your explanation and the staff report is the reason we're doing this preliminary plat approval is because of a condition imposed by the prior Metropolitan Planning Commission on any future changes to the site. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say, yeah.
Okay, so we're not talking about approving a sketch plan. We're talking about approving a preliminary plat. That is the request on the table, and that is the staff recommendation, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll ask if the applicant would like to come forward and make their presentation.
Good evening, Chairman. My name's Dan Kiefer. I'm with Whitmer Jones Kiefer, and I'm joined by Tim Butcher and Larry Paragano. So we're here to answer questions. And first, I'd like to thank Kurt for the in-depth detail he provided for everybody. So I think he provided all the history from 2019 to today. And so we're definitely here for the preliminary plat approval and glad to answer any questions. Kurt did a really good job of background, so I might just go into the questions to start. And then we can be available to answer questions, but a couple of notes. One, the buffer. Kurt, could I go back to the plan? Okay. So there was a staff comment about the buffer along the western property line next to lot 10. And I can't point to it, but we have room to increase that green space. We probably have another 5 feet or so to add more green space there with a slight shift on some lots in that run of lots. And we also can look at with staff, we would probably do a low, like a 4-foot living fence there as well, just to have the the landscape buffer and then a low fence. So that shouldn't be, no concerns with that. The building heights, again, we're asking for preliminary plat approval of the plan. We don't have architectural design yet. We do know that with the townhomes, we would be a maximum of 3 stories. So depending on the final design, we may end up with parking on the lower level and 2 floors above that. So three floors would be what we would request as far as not known at this point. But it was our understanding that that wasn't under the purview of planning commission as far as that condition. But I will say that the 3 stories is what we were looking at in terms of flexibility, not having the plans designed yet.
So how do you plan to address our concern that you would have this big 3-story structure right immediately adjacent to the single-family homes?
I think architecturally, we could look at that as far as the scale of the building, whether we step the building down or there's porches or other articulation to the building to lower the scale of the building. So they're not designed yet.
Because I promise you, there's people who are going to get up here and talk about that very concern. So I'd like to hear anything you have to say about how you would address that concern, because I think it's a valid concern. I mean, if you're going to put a big 3-story structure, how close would that 3-story structure be to the next regular ordinary house?
So if we started the south part of the plan, that same lot 10, that's the most southern lot. So we would be looking at the front facade of that building is pulled back roughly 20 feet from the street. And that would have, I mean, per the code, that would have porches and articulation on the front of the building. So you'd be looking at the front of the building there, that massing of the building.
What about immediately to the west of lot 10?
Immediately to the west would be the buffer that's there that we'd be establishing.
When you say you would establish, does that mean you'd plant trees there?
Yes,
Are there any trees there now that are going to be preserved to
There-
help add to that?
there's 2 laurel oaks there that are now that would be preserved.
Are there any trees that are there now that are going to be cut down?
They're not along the property line, though. There's a 33-inch live oak and a 37-inch live oak that are on the street. That's why those buildings are pulled back. So the foreground for that lot in particular will be the large live oaks,
When you say the foreground, what do you mean? The front, the back, the side?
the front,
So the north side of that lot?
north side, correct. Then they're really the same thing, and I can go back to that one, but the same thing, if we work our way up to lot 1, there's a 36-inch live oak to the west side of that lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then lots 64 or 67, 68, those have roughly 60 feet from property line to the back of those buildings. And
So if you go back to that west side of the property line behind 64, 65, 66, are there any trees right over near that property line that you're going to take down or want to take down?
there are, while I'm looking at that, there are, so with those townhomes, they'll be the main structure of the building. If it's 3 stories, it'll be 3 stories on what we call the front. The back would be like a garage or carriage house, so it definitely would step down.
You haven't answered my question yet.
I'm flipping to that. There's 5 or 6 laurel oaks that are staying. And then we have proposed magnolias and hollies along that back.
But you haven't answered my question. Are any trees there behind to the west of 64, 65, 66? are any trees back there that you're going to take down that would be part of a buffer to anything to the west of the property?
No. No, there's one that's, say, 50 feet off property line, but they're all the ones within the 30-foot buffer area are staying.
There's one tree located in the center of the house.
Yeah.
So, and that's the only one we're removing.
Yeah.
Everything else is remain intact.
So there's none, because I'm looking at the plan, so I see the one that's in the parking area that's gonna come down, but
Right.
immediately to the left of that, there's like, looks like two others that I think they're indicated to be taken down as well.
If there's not an X on them, I'm trying to zoom in here, but the one, if you see the
I,
28,
I see two X's, that's why I'm raising this. Come here, let me show you what I'm talking about. You see-
Yeah, that's outdated. Here's our newer one. We don't plan on getting rid of those.
Okay. Okay, so those are staying. Okay, you understand why I asked, you understand why I asked the question? Okay.
When you talk about a buffer behind these houses, to separate from the neighbors, are you talking about a berm back? Putting a berm in there to raise the trees up higher? Any undergrowth up higher than at grade? Or are you just gonna put foliage in at grade on the property line to separate the two properties?
there'd be no berm. I mean, I think what we're talking about is one, saving the trees, existing trees that we just mentioned. And then the buffers would be what we have proposed as far as the understory hollies and additional trees.
Mhm. Okay. So we still don't have a we don't have a break between the neighbors and the new place. Only in trees. You can, and the trees. Move through the trees.
What, can you explain what you're looking for? Are you looking for like a ground level hedge? Like,
I'm talking about either putting a berm in there and then put hedge on top of the berm, or trees on top of the berm to get the trees up in the air to block the view of the neighbors onto your property. If they're in that grade, how long is it gonna take? Sure, and how much blockage are they going to provide?
well,
Looking out for the folks that are on the other side of your property.
yeah, for us, it'd be a layered approach. So first thing, we'd look at the trees that are there. We wouldn't want to fill around those trees, so we'd keep it at grade to save the trees that are there. And then, based on this discussion, we'd provide a layered buffer, so there's a lower evergreen screen, like a wax myrtle, let's say, that's at eye level, you can't see through. And then the next level up might be palmettos or smaller magnolias that get you 15 to 20 feet. And then there's other canopy tree that would be above that. So it'd be sort of a 3-layer approach. Some of the canopy trees would be the trees that we are keeping there, and then the additional trees would be a layered buffer. And that's something we could work with staff on as far as getting that buffer in place in terms of one, looking at the existing trees and also looking at the adjacent building heights, where we're looking at backs to the buildings versus the sides. Obviously, we'd want more of a buffer there. I'm gonna move on to one more, just the comments, and then we can come back to that if we need to. There was a question about the park on the front, as far as, what that would look like. I mean, our plan would be that is a nice usable park space it's full of live oaks. So we would thin and underbrush the vegetation that's undesirable there. Obviously, keep all the live oaks as proposed, and we'd have the townhomes fronting that park space. And in terms of scale, that's roughly 120 feet between the edge of road and where any of those townhomes would be. So if you drove by there, those are spectacular live oaks, and we didn't want to encroach on any of that space. And in particular, taking the road out opens it up even more for just being simple park-like space. And in terms of the connectivity, we agreed with staff on that, and we're using and we understand the spirit of the code or the connectivity. We intentionally kept the green space and a pedestrian connection through there. So there will still be a very nice connection. So the street terminates on a green space that you can see through, and then there's a strong pedestrian connection through there as well.
I have a question about that. Well, actually two.
Sure.
Would the plan be to fence the perimeter of this development?
No, if there was any fencing up there, it'd be a lower type fence.
So this park open space area along Rebo Road, I mean, looking at your neighbors, we have a medical complex, lots of people working there, patients and visitors there. We have Coastal Empire immediately to the south. There's lots of activity around there. Would that park open space be designed in such a way to let them use it, to have lunch and, is there going to be a sidewalk? Is there going to be anything like that?
We're hoping that a lot of people that work at the hospital live here and walk across the street, so that they'll use it. As far as the end use of, as far as events and things like that, we haven't programmed that at this point. So it's gonna be accessible for everybody to walk through it. We're hoping that people that work across the street will walk through there. I know I'm not answering your question of, can they use it? I don't know.
Well-
Program wise, obviously the sidewalks will be open for everybody to pass through.
So that's kind of an interesting question because I think you're essentially asking, is this private property going to be available to the public? And I know we've talked about this before because in my neighborhood where I live.
We know about your neighbor.
Yeah, no, but yeah, that's an issue. That is an issue. So I wouldn't expect this private property to be advertised or available to anybody walking along Rebo to just come in and use because it's not a public park.
Well, but I think I'm hearing something a little different from the applicant here. I don't know. And I don't see a sidewalk on this rendering. I don't believe that there is one right now. Would one be put in?
There's a sidewalk on Rebo. We're just.
Yeah,
Is there-
the sidewalk
Right
on
on
Rebo.
Yep.
Okay, I didn't know if it went all the way that far down.
Mhm.
Are you going to have like some kind of,
You see it there? It's.
Yeah, I see it there. Thank you.
Probably not the safest.
It's- yeah, it's-
Yeah, not the best sidewalk, but a sidewalk.
are you guys gonna think about putting some kind of low, maybe decorative type wall to keep, kids from running into Rebo?
That would be the either a low hedge or a low wall, yes. Or a fence. We haven't programmed that space yet. Right now it's a green space, park-like green space.
Well, like right now, there's a chain link fence around the excluded property on the southwest corner of.
Oh, correct. Yeah, they have a low brick wall as well.
Yeah,
there.
I just noticed the chain link, but you're not planning to continue that around your property?
No.
Okay.
I don't think we'd be allowed to either.
I don't think you've given us a topo, right? I see topo lines, but I don't see a topo. Real faint topo lines every once in a while, but no topo.
I don't think I have it in hand.
No.
I mean, this is probably, you can see it. I can't really read it too much, but it has the elevations on it and the topography.
Yeah, I guess if I was looking at a topo overlay of your site, it would tell me a whole lot more about the buildings and, how this thing is actually being sited. I can't tell from here if part of this topo is down as low as 6 or 7 feet. And other parts maybe at 13. I would like to see what that is and how that's working.
It's a very unique site in the area. The road is surrounding is around elevation 20, and then down in the bottom of it was elevation 8. And this area has been a drainage issue that there's probably I think there's an 18-acre drainage basin that drains to it. So we've started this project in 2017 and been working with the city on the stormwater drainage system for Allison Road, designing it. And now that the Allison Road's finally there, now we have an outfall pipe, so we could actually drain our site at a low elevation. When this was a mobile home park, the Miss Bennett would come in, but she was the previous owner, and she would pump it down with a SUT pump and pump it down into, Allison Road, between all the storms. So now the city thankfully, has installed outfall pipe, and we can get our stormwater out. And now this is open up for a developable site, but we've done a lot of work, working around the trees, because they are, this is a very unique site where you don't ever see elevations at 8 and 20 in the low country. So,
And I can understand that. I'm talking, what I'm referring to more about, not the engineering of the systems, but the architecture, and where that architecture is. If you're down at 8 and you're trying to build a 2-story or 3-story building, what does that look like? How does that affect, what you're seeing off of Rebo Road or from the adjacent neighborhoods?
yeah, so our road system's gonna be built a little bit higher, so they will be lifted up. And I believe the codes for the townhomes are gonna be 3 feet off the grade, is what we have to be. So we definitely did our best to work the open spaces around the trees, so that way we could.
And I understand that too. I just, I would like to see grades so I could understand, how these buildings are situated in those low areas versus the higher areas.
Most of those low areas where the homes are gonna be filled.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said?
There's gonna be some fill in those areas where we're leaving any place that there's no townhomes down at the natural grades, obviously to save the trees. But, when we're surrounding them by an alleyway and in the roadways, we gotta get them up, because unfortunately I can't build a road at the same elevation. I think my outfall pipe that the city's providing me is at elevation 7. So as the water stages in ponds and goes up and down, we typically see about 5 feet. So we don't want that water coming out of our road beds, just from engineering practice. So those road beds are roughly around elevation 11.5, 12.
Hmm.
So, and then it is challenging with ADA and everything as we connect to, the Rebo Road, which was there, that was at 20. Allison Road was at about elevation 20, and I would say Pine Haven or Oak Haven is around elevation 16. So, and everything just kind of, we were the hole that every drainage.
Yeah, when you stand on the side of that site, it looks,
It does. It is
Very
very
downhill.
fast. Like I said, you don't really see that very much. And while I'm talking about the Oak Haven Road, that is a 50-foot DOT street. That's 20-foot width. And it used to be a daycare. Shannon Erickson used to own a daycare that was on that road, so it is used to high levels of traffic.
I'm more concerned with the width of the road.
Correct. This would be 20 feet wide.
when you say a high level of traffic, you saying the daycare would have the same amount of traffic as this project?
At the peaks, probably, yes. The daycare?
I'm sorry.
Folks,
You all will have your opportunity to speak.
Yeah.
You'll have your opportunities.
Yeah, the daycare did have a lot of kids that go there. And so you'd have high levels of peak hours of everybody leaving at the same point and picking up at the same point of the day from a traffic standpoint.
on Oak Haven.
Yes, I know, because it was a dead end street at the end of there. So they always went just in one direction.
I guess before I turn it over to the public for their comments and give you the opportunity to respond to theirs and have the board, I just wanted to comment on a couple of things. One is, I do think that this is definitely different than the original sketch plan. So it may want to be considered a sketch plan as opposed to the preliminary plat. I'm really scared going to the preliminary plat with this thing and not having any architectural concept of what's going on here from any kind of a massing study or some type of concept of what's going on architecturally with these buildings. This is a highly significant site, and I'm concerned about what we're going to put on that site. I applaud your working with staff and getting to the point that you're at with all of these and reducing the density and all that. I think that's all great stuff. But that next step in trying to see what we're really talking about here in terms of massing and architecture. And I'm not talking about what is the architecture on each building. I'm talking about what is the concept? What is your architectural concept for what's going on with this? I think also really focusing on being more specific about what your intent is on these building sites. I know you said traditionally you're going to be 3 stories for these buildings, and I can understand that. Most townhouses are going to be 3 stories, but I would like to tie it down a little bit more than that to say that that's the direction we're going, but then also looking at these critical areas that are up against the existing residential areas, which are 1-story buildings in large part, maybe a few 2-story buildings, and making sure that the construction that we're doing on those adjacent areas is consistent with giving them a little bit of a height buffer as you go up into the rest of your development. And I am concerned about a TIA for this, looking at the impact on Allison Road and Oak Haven. And I am concerned about the width of Oak Haven for a higher volume of traffic that we're looking at here. I just don't think it was constructed, not that it wasn't constructed to handle the loads, but the width and having a center line so that you can have cars passing each other safely. I'm not sure if it was built to state standards, even though it's a state road. I'm not sure who put that in there, but those are some of the concerns I have.
And we provided updated TIA, so we had a memo from when we had the previous plan that we're looking at with all the commercial developments, and then now obviously the reduced loadings, and it has been approved by DOT as well.
So you have. Let me just get check on what Mike said, what I said earlier. And I'm sorry for you all that, you haven't come here with the stuff that the planning commission has asked before. So what we are now is this new planning commission is reconstituted, is sitting as what it always sat as was a reviewer of subdivision applications. The existing code is really poorly drafted in that respect. The difference between what they'll call a site plan, but they also call it a preliminary plat. Our real authority as of today is over sketch plans. Now, I understand that there was this condition that was placed on the prior sketch plan, but this is a dramatically different sketch plan. I'm not saying that it isn't a really good sketch plan. I'm just saying that it's different. And it doesn't rise to the level of what the code, in my view, and I think the chairman's calls a preliminary plat, or what they also call a site plan. In there, it talks about a 2-dimensional plan, which would tend to suggest maybe not the final design elevations, but giving us an actual sense of the buildings, which would involve not just a commitment to no more height than say 2 stories, but actually give us a sense of what that is going to look like. There's a number of other provisions in there. The TIA is something that we've discussed at before, and unfortunately we didn't get it today. So the mere fact that you come in here like other applicants telling us that somebody else has signed off on it, we're not prepared, as we've said in a lot of meetings before, to delegate our authority over TIAs to somebody else. That doesn't mean that at some point in time, what we say and what South Carolina DOT might say, or the engineering department of the county might say, might be in conflict, but we view that as critical for us to be able to make our determination. So I'm not going to necessarily ask you for the levels of service today, but I couldn't vote on this. It's not your fault if you don't, if you find it, but I'm not prepared to vote on any plan of this nature unless I have the TIA and I can at least look at those. I'm capable of doing that. I've looked at thousands of these before, and I just want to see them in the future. So those are just some of the things that, unfortunately, depending on how the discussion eventually goes, I'm not going to ask you to get into it today because we've been asking. If I'd had it, might not have even asked a question about it because the answers are probably right there on the piece of paper.
Yes, Bill, do you have something?
Regarding your systems, the storm sewer system, sewer system, sanitary sewer, storm system, and water. How does your design impact the surrounding systems? Have you taken that into consideration, and does it work? Who's approved that? Have we seen it? Has the city seen it?
Beaufort Jasper, we've been coordinating our water and sewer with Beaufort Jasper.
And
Water-
have they approved the impact of 72 units? The-
We got real close and now we're here for preliminary plat to get a final site plan approval before we go all the way and get DHEC permits on that stuff. So
So you're not
they've
sure
had
whether-
3 reviews.
So you're not
I-
sure
I-
whether the
I-
sewers.
I think the staff I think the staff report said that all of that was, the staff report, I think, addressed that, because that's one of the criteria we have to consider.
We have a
It does say-
stormwater engineer who approved that, but sanitary
Water
sewer and
result.
water goes to Beaufort Jasper.
Stormwater.
That's a separate process. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So there's
So the
two different-
stormwater you say is
there's
compliant.
two different, yeah. So the city reviews stormwater through a consultant, engineer.
Okay.
So that's compliant.
What about?
Water and sewer, I think he just answered you. That goes to Beaufort Jasper.
But it hasn't been reviewed yet, has it?
It's been reviewed 3 times. We haven't had final approval on it just because we're not at that point with the city where, once I go and get with the fire marshal and get final fire hydrant locations, that's when we go for final approval. And then it gets approved by SEDHEC for permit to construct. So we are right there at the final end of it. But yes, there is adequate water.
And I'm gonna defend you on that because I just keep going back to the code. The code says that the detailed engineering on some things like TIA, we're entitled to see, but on calculations of stormwater, for example, we're not at this.
Right.
That would be not be part of the site plan.
Of
But
course.
And that would be part of the next stage for them, not this stage.
Okay.
So it's a question of what we should and can be asking them for and what we can't really.
All right.
And so we just need to know where these different items fall in terms of our purview at this stage.
Well, there's a statement in the staff report at the bottom of page 6 on the lower right side. There is existing water, sewer, stormwater, and electric utilities to support the plan.
Yeah.
That's the staff analysis, so.
Yeah.
And that's all I needed is a commitment from
Yeah.
you for Jasper that you had capacity.
There's
Yeah,
existing capacity
that's-
to serve the project.
Okay.
They have been coming to our TRC meetings, so you could see they had an official TRC meeting in July or August. It's in your packet. I should have it. But I understand there's capacity out there, so that's the big thing.
Right, and that's all we can ask at this point is capacity.
2 things. You do need to state your name for the record at some point and write it down.
Yeah.
I'm Tim Brutcher with Carolina Engineering.
Yeah, could you write that down? Because we have to keep a list of everybody who talks to us. The other thing that I wanted to ask you guys, have you reached out to the adjoining property owners, the neighbors, to talk to them and to try to address any concerns that they have?
We had a couple of the neighbors came up to the TRC and spoke out and we interjected and that's one of the reasons why we got rid of the full connection to Rebo was to
Mhm.
address the cut throughs and as well as align some of the more intersections. And Dan, would you get the last shift? Did we update the shift or we are going to update?
We're
the
gonna
shift?
update that.
And we're gonna shift to get a little more additional buffer between lot 10. You want us in the public comment sheet?
Yeah.
Okay, so right now I'm gonna go ahead and ask for public comment. When you come up, would you please give us your name and address, sign in? And in large part, don't repeat what somebody else has already said, but cover new territory as much as possible.
Thank you, Diane Farrelly, 2415 Oak Haven Street. Also representing the Haven Collective.
What is the Haven Collective?
There's the neighborhoods on Oak Haven Street, Pine Haven Street, and other interested neighbors in that area who have joined in to follow this project all the way from 2018 on. Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Haven Collective with reference to the plan submitted for preliminary plat approval for 1026 Rebo Road. As you know, our neighborhood has been following this project since 2018 when it was first introduced by the former owner, Sam Levin. Mr. Levin had requested a rezoning of T4N and T3S properties to T5UC. Notices for the rezoning hearing were posted on Rebo Road and at the end of the state-maintained dead end of Oak Haven Street. No notifications were sent to bordering property owners or those within 100 feet, which was an inconsistent application of standard protocols at the time. Signage did not take into consideration contiguous property owners on Pine Haven Street. They had no access to see these signs. Subsequently, there was very little opposition at the meeting, and Mr. Levin received the rezoning in conflict with the intent of the code to have transitional zones. When one more T3S property on Oak Haven Street came up for rezoning, the neighbors saw the signs and successfully opposed the rezoning. This resulted in the 1026 Rebo Road property to be configured with the bulk of the property fronting Rebo Road and Allison Road, with several lots on Oak Haven Street in a bit of a zigzag pattern, as you could see if you look at the overall lines of this property. A sketch plan was submitted to the Metropolitan Planning Commission for approval. The MPC approved the sketch plan with a number of conditions, one of which was the recommendation to not cut Oak Haven Street through to Rebo Road, and another was that the developer was to work with the neighborhood in the design process. The meeting at which this condition was mandated was the first to move from detailed written minutes to a video recording of the meeting. The video recording was cut off just before this last condition. However, Chairman Tomey, you were the chair at the time of the MPC, and I am certain that you recall that condition as it was your recommendation. Article 3, Administration, Section 54020, Designation of Administrator. The city manager or their designee is hereby responsible for the administration and implementation of the provisions of this ordinance. Section 5-4023, Duties and Responsibilities of the Local Administrator. Number 6, notify adjacent communities. Notify adjacent communities prior to permitting substantial commercial developments and large subdivisions to be undertaken in areas of special flood hazard and/or flood-related erosion hazards. And as you have heard, this property goes down to 7 foot above sea level. Various city staff are well aware of this condition, and yet when the new owner brought a plan to the TRC for a pre-design meeting, we were not notified. We have been monitoring agendas and discovered the schedule for this meeting, which was held last August, and several neighbors came and spoke. The new owner was made aware of the neighborhood's interest at this meeting and that we would welcome an invitation to meet. However, we never received one. Apparently, several more informal meetings were held with staff and revisions made without any notification to the neighbors. Beaufort has been named a top small town in which to live many times. The city received an award for a plan that transitions zoning from more dense to more rural. The master civic plan calls for transitional zones, and yet 1026 Rebo was rezoned to the highest density, abutting 2 streets with small single-family homes, T3S. Oak Haven Street and Pine Haven Street have mostly post-World War II homes, 3 of which on Oak Haven Street are on the South Carolina Register of Historic Homes. The award-winning plan calls for maintaining the character of neighborhoods. While this newest sketch plan is an improvement, and we thank you for that, over previous plans, there remains some grave concerns for the neighborhood. Multiple concerns about cutting Oak Haven Street through to Rebo Road. By not cutting it through, I think they have missed the intent of not cutting it through. It was all the through traffic that would be happening, not to impose more traffic from this neighborhood onto Oak Haven, which now is really one of the only ways to enter and exit, aside from Myrtle. The impact of through traffic on the neighborhood, possible widening and curbing of Oak Haven Street, which is currently, it might be a 50-foot right-of-way, but it is a 20-foot wide street. And it would be encroaching on neighbors' property and impacting live oak tree roots that are all along that road. Tying into 1026 Rebo Road with sidewalks out of character with the neighborhood. The intent was to consider using Oak Haven as perhaps a gated emergency vehicle access only, open to foot and bike traffic. The traffic impact statement submitted with this application was initially conducted in 2020 during COVID and was not done according to the planned site development. It's considerably different plan at this point. The subsequent 2022 and 2024 traffic impact studies were prepared only by applying calculations to the first study and not by a new study. The study was based on 36 single-family detached units and mixed use, not the current 72 attached row houses. The report says that it is an annual average study, but that it was conducted during a school section. That doesn't make sense. If it was an annual average, it would have been conducted over the period of 365 days. It more seems to signify an average trip count, excuse me, for a certain period of time. In June 2024, there was an ordinance change to divert all commercial truck traffic away from the historic district and to travel down Rebo Road. This has also not been considered in the current TIS. Row houses, while allowed in T4N, are not consistent with the character of the single-family homes on Oak Haven Street, and especially directly abutting one of the historic homes and directly across from another small ranch home on the street. This would be home 2410, which if you can look in here, they now have an alley, an access alley to go behind their row homes that is directly abutting this historic single-family home with row houses. The height of the row houses has not been committed, and while we appreciate staff's recommendation that the developer hold 2 of these row houses on Oak Haven Street to a 2-story limit, some of the homes on Pine Haven Street will be impacted by others that may be built at 3 stories. In addition, garages are planned for the ground floor. Does this mean the buildings may be 2 or 3 stories above the garage? I believe you answered that question. The garage counts as a floor, is that right? Thank you. Environmental impact. The Grove has served thus far as noise abatement from Rebo, carbon emission control, water infiltration and replenishment of the aquifer, stormwater drainage, biomediation of contaminants, and food and shelter for wildlife. Breezes that flow through the trees help to mitigate what would otherwise become a heat island effect. The Grove is an important natural feature and buffer zone for the neighborhoods abutting it. From a local botanist with particular expertise in native plants and water filtration, he says, the area of the former trailer park between Rebo and Oak Haven should remain an infiltration area as a receiver of water and not as a producer of water, especially when there is not a drainage problem currently in that area. Everything naturally goes down, takes its time over a couple of days, it percolates away. Development of a natural drainage area changes the soil type and compaction of that area. The result is that stormwater can no longer be absorbed by the soil and slowly seep and perk into the groundwater. An increase in the natural drain cannot be biomediated, and the runoff will contain contaminants from animal waste, lawn chemicals, oil, and gas. In addition, drained water will not replenish the aquifer. Adding stormwater drainage to handle development will adversely impact the environment and drive up stormwater management fees unnecessarily. Fresh water is one of the biggest pollutants to impact waterways. Battery Creek is already impacted by drainage off of one side of the creek. The drainage is sluggish as a result of Boundary Street development that cut off the natural course of the drainage. That would be the bridge near where the Kmart was, where it stops there. It used to flow through there. A pump station would be needed to pump the stormwater to the future stormwater drainage plant that has now been done for Allison Road. The subsequent flush into Battery Creek will produce a rapid change in the salinity of the creek, further impacting the creek, its plant life, and its inhabitants. The low-lying part of the property is 8 foot or 7 foot, kind of depends on when you measure it, I guess, above sea level. 5 feet of fill, which would bring it up to 13 feet, which is the flood level that it has to be built above. 5 feet of fill is in violation of the code, which is what would be necessary to bring the buildings up above the flood zone. We respectfully request that a new TIS be conducted, at a minimum, a new TIS be conducted based on the current proposal. A condition be applied to limit the height of the buildings to 2 stories wherever they would be within an 80-foot buffer from the existing homes in the neighborhood. The lot next to 2410 Oak Haven be redesigned as a single-family home or at most a duplex. The alley shown as well as between the zigzagging the 2410 historic home with the row houses right next to it and an alley to access it. Those row houses would also immediately face another single-family post-World War II ranch home. That's what they would be looking at. And if you look behind, kind of in the other zigzag where the property zigs halfway behind the other property, I'm sorry, I don't know the number right offhand, that's where they have guest parking and more houses, and that's sort of like in this guy's backyard almost, if you take a look at it carefully. The alley shown, okay, should be eliminated. A curb cut be created on Allison at Rebo Road for the purpose of allowing right-hand traffic to flow unimpeded. And I think that if there were, I mean, as it stands now, people coming up to the light at Allison have to wait a long time. You have all of that traffic trying to come out at Allison in the morning when they're trying to go to work, that they can't turn right until they're waiting with a lineup. Or else they're just gonna, all that traffic's gonna come down Oak Haven to be diverted around. If there were at least and I know it's probably not called a curb cut, I don't know the official language, but a lane where they could turn right, a right-hand only turn lane, that would, I think, help a lot with.
Where at?
At the corner of Allison and Rebo.
Ah.
Where the parking is now for the
Mhm.
hospital. That's as far as I was able to get before dealing with a family emergency. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Patience Russell. I am Diane's neighbor, 2417 Oak Haven Street. Diane did a really great job of laying out the whole thing. I want y'all to understand what it is like to live on Oak Haven Street. I am from the Low Country. I'm from Edisto Island originally. I've been a school counselor in Beaufort since I was 25, and I'm maybe 7 years from retirement now. I love the Low Country. It's a special place. I bought that house because I wanted a house that was not in a flood zone, near the Spanish Moss Trail, quiet, and Oak Haven delivers. It's a tiny street, y'all. It is so narrow. We have to kind of work with each other coming in and out. We have our neighbors who are social, who like to throw their dinner parties, and we kind of weave around their dinner party traffic. We have, our different folks who have a lawn care business, and when he comes through with his traffic, we all move out. We have another neighbor who runs his bloodhound up and down that narrow street with his golf cart, and we just know that his name is Beaufort. He's going to trample through our yards and we're going to get slobbered on and licked. It's a really sweet little conclave. I understand development has to happen, y'all. I get it. I get that professionals need a place to live. I do not think that you need to have Oak Haven cutting through. I think Oak Haven would be better served if you're going to put, clearly someone's going to develop it and people are going to live there because that's the world we live in. I would prefer, and I think it would uphold, I own one of those historic homes. It would be better served to make it a cut through for pedestrian traffic only so that those folks can access the Spanish Moss Trail, one of the big draws for me in that property. I think that if the city is really concerned about EMS and fire trucks and whatnot, you could have little stanchions that they could pull up to get the fire trucks in there if that need arose. I do not think it needs to be a cut through. And I would really welcome y'all to try to drive down that street yourselves and please see what we're talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you fill out the form?
Ooh,
Look, stay on top of that.
almost burned on that one.
I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Marilyn Hartshorek. I'm the one that has dinner parties and people parking on the side of the street. I live at 2416, which when you turn down Oak Haven, it's the second house on the right. And those first three houses on the right are new construction. So the houses that went up in 1952 have very large lots, and the houses are set back from the road reasonably well, because they were one lot. The lot that these three houses are on used to be one lot. And so the builder who put the houses, the first three houses, mine being one, he put them pretty far up, and they're very narrow. I have a detached garage in my backyard. I can't get there with a car because it's too tight on either side. So, I mean, I don't have a lot of room. And I went out and measured the street. It might be a 20-foot street, but the pavement in front of my house is 17 and a half feet. It is very tight. And if that road were to be expanded, I could probably pogo stick from my porch into my car, because most of my front yard is in the, whatever you call it.
Right away.
Thank you. Thank you. But I bought the house because it served my need. It's near the hospital. It's near the Life Fit. It's near the Spanish Moss Trail. I have to say, improving the land that is down there from what it was a trailer park to something else is a great idea. But from my point of view, the number of units and the number of cars that would be coming down Oak Haven is too much. And I know that from a business standpoint, they want to make some money on this. They don't want to lose money, but I would lower the density significantly. And I might even have some workforce housing that isn't quite as tall and quite as large and quite as expensive, maybe on the buffer side where we are. But I know you all will do the right thing. And please feel free to drive down my street anytime and see how close we are, the very first three houses on the right.
Did you ever live on Oak Haven when there was a daycare on that street?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. I did, actually. And there weren't that many cars that came and went, and they came in the morning, back and forth, and they came at night to pick up their kids. And I would say if they were all there at one time, there might have been 10 cars. So it wasn't that many cars. But I'm telling you, they could go 40 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember sitting on my porch just, and when they closed the daycare, it was wonderful because we didn't have those people running up and down the street. And the other thing is that I think, given where we are now, where all the people who live on Oak Haven, we're not used to having that much traffic. And that's kind of the only, other than Allison, it's the only way out. And everybody going to Hilton Head and Bluffton and Savannah for jobs and Paris Island, they're all going to go down Oak Haven and Battery Creek. So there's going to be a lot of traffic. And it was hard when the daycare center was there. And so I just know it'll be bad. And then even if you put in traffic calming devices, it's a state road. I don't know who's in charge of that, how that works, if it's possible, I don't know. That's all I have, but I'm going to sign in, so I'll step aside.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else that would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Barb Bausch, and I live at 2403 Pine Haven Street. Coming here today, going out of Allison at 4:45, I was the 9th car. There was at least one other behind me. When the light changed, I don't know how many others were behind me. That makes it difficult for the parking lot, for anyone to go out of the parking lot or into the parking lot with that many cars. Because that's almost at Myrtle Avenue, where once this development is made and they're coming from Allison onto Myrtle, with all the cars going out of Allison onto Rebo, left or right, that's gonna be a challenge. It already is a challenge going for the people going into the parking lot in the morning, in the afternoon. So that is a big concern for, 72 units. That's a lot of people going in and out. And also, the tree listing of what's being saved and what's being, out, it's, removed. It said 63 trees are being removed and 10 trees are being saved in the report. I don't see that as tree preservation at all. Very concerned about that and all that the trees provide, our area. I just see it kind of cleared and then little trees gonna take forever to grow up and give us some privacy that we already have. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Samantha Patel. I live at 2407 Pine Haven Street, so just down the street from Barb here. So we are to the south side of the proposed plan. Our main
Could you say your last name again, please?
Patel.
Patel.
Our main concern is being that this will be in our backyard, the height of the properties. We definitely would request that no higher than 2 stories be built. As Mr. Holman said, that basically we would go in our backyard and everyone would be looking down. There would be no privacy. And my house, being that I have 2 young children, every single child on Pine Haven Street comes to my backyard to play. And that would just ruin the privacy, the fun, everything. So that is what we are asking of you for this project. If you could do anything, is to at least keep it to 2 stories so we can not only, sorry, I wrote it down. I get nervous. We can keep our privacy and also the value of our homes. Because if anybody's recently seen the Pine Court apartments that they've put out in the backyards by the Dollar General, there's absolutely 0 privacy. You walk out and there's those 3-story buildings. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Isn't Pine Haven like further away from Oak Haven?
1 street over. Yeah, it's okay then Pine.
I know, I'm looking at the map right now, but it's much further away from this proposed development, is it not?
No, this is gonna be in our backyard. Yeah. Yeah, if you put the picture up, we are. Oh,
That help? No, that didn't really help
okay.
at all.
I got you. Okay.
There we
gonna
go.
say,
That's maybe the,
We
You can
are,
see,
like, our house is directly
Pine
behind
Haven.
lots like 14, 15, 16,
Okay,
17.
I'm,
yeah, now it's on.
yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Carrie Walsh and I live at 2411 Allison, so I'm on the other side of the road from where the development is proposed. I had a question and also a statement. Allison, we get a lot of emergency traffic. We get police up and down all the time, the ambulance up and down all the time. So I just want that to also be in consideration, is that is a direct route for all emergency vehicles when they're coming through. So they need to be able to access Rebo. I don't know how that will affect the traffic for them to get out onto Rebo, but that's just something to keep in mind. And then you had mentioned that the water is not going to be discussed here, all of the drainage. I just have a question where that will be discussed, because our house is about 15 feet up from the marsh. And if all of the water from the development is going to be running through the drainage, which is in my next door neighbor's yard, at times I'm just questioning how high that, with all the additional water, what that effect will be. And I'm just not sure where I'll find that out.
I think I can address that, at least in a motion that I will prepare, coming from this they're gonna have to address, stormwater, and I'll detail it in a motion or an amendment to some.
Okay, okay, just so they keep it in mind, because we are very close.
Some of it is on their preliminary plats. Most of it is there, but it's not satisfactory to me, but I'll address that later in more detail.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Evening, Jesse White, the Coastal Conservation League. I also live at 308 Battery Creek Road, which is right near this. And I just want to say straight off the top that I made a big error in my review. I was incorrectly thinking of row homes as kind of the Charleston style of a row home, individual homes on narrow lots, sideways facing. And did not check the code's definition, so that's on me. But I just wanted to say my comments are with that assumption in mind. And many of the I outlined several areas where I think additional tree preservation could be included, and that may change some of those calculations based on that knowledge. But I would also just add to my comments that I would urge the applicant to maybe consider individual standalone row homes instead of big block style row homes for these different building footprints without seeing the actual building footprint on the lot. On the proposed plan, it's hard, like you were saying, Chairman, to kind of understand the impact of the massing and the scale. I think that individual homes could reduce impervious surface overall and also transition and blend more naturally with the surrounding environment or neighborhood. I appreciate that the stormwater concerns were addressed and that abiding by the Southern Low Country Stormwater Manual will be happening. I just encourage the applicant to utilize more of the green infrastructure alternatives that the manual lays out instead of relying on a wet detention pond in the center, utilizing rain gardens, bioswales, credit for additional tree retention, etc. In terms of traffic, as I was sitting here today, I think I've been convinced that keeping some sort of right in, right out onto Rebo would probably be beneficial to traffic stacking up at the light at Allison and just where the Myrtle Street intersection hits at Allison. I do believe that could cause some trouble and pain for folks having something that's right in, right out, not a main entrance. You could probably still do without sacrificing any trees from your park or open space area. I would also encourage the applicant to put some sort of speed hump or other physical traffic calmer or barrier on their portion of the Oak Haven Street property to further discourage any cut through traffic onto Oak Haven. And again, agree with limiting the height, in addition to just the lots that are closest to the individual homes, setting a cap on the overall height for the whole site would be greatly appreciated. I think I've heard a lot of folks say two stories is what they are most comfortable with. I would encourage the applicant to sit with the neighbors most immediately surrounding this property and talk about some of those things. The majority of the homes are single story single-family homes. And so anything that can be done to increase the transition from those existing homes to this site would be greatly appreciated. We do really appreciate how much effort has been made to try to reduce the density, but we think that additional reduction may be warranted, especially if they are attached row home blocks. That's very different than detached individual homes. So at a minimum, we would call on the applicant to look at lots 1 through 23 in particular, and consider alternatives to big block style multifamily-esque row homes. Maybe consider, I don't know what the right terminology is for what I was thinking that these were. I don't know if Charleston row home is an actual term of art, but I know that a lot of some of the newer development in Port Royal is also doing this, where the houses are kind of oriented with the narrow side facing the street, and that allows for you to get a few more homes in, but still retains a little bit of a yard in between.
Like a shotgun style.
Yes, that. We would just encourage the applicant to really think about reducing the overall number a little bit more, just given the significance of this intersection, the traffic that's already at play, and just the existing fabric of the neighborhood that is already there, and the folks who really, I think we're done a bit of a disservice in however the approvals came to be, that this property was rezoned in the way that it was. I think, it is what it is, but to the extent that any additional effort can be made to create a voluntary buffer transition of the actual scale of buildings would be greatly appreciated. And with that, I believe I've covered all my comments. I have an extra copy of my comments that I will give to you all, but understanding that I made an error on my trees, but I still want you to have it, just so you can look at it. Thank you.
Did you sign in?
Thank you, Jesse.
Hello, I'm Joe Saccone, 2411 Oak Haven.
Hey, say your last name again?
Saccone, Ciccone.
I never would have got that.
I'm the last house on the block.
Hmm.
All right, I'm not part of any of this group with Pine Haven or anything like that, because initially I was going to be part of when Sam Levine was going to do this and stuff, and I never have ever spoken to any of them since this all started. Quite frankly, if we get something done, we are not going to please everybody. Something has to happen there. All right. It looks like crap when you're going down Rebo. I step out of the front of my house and I look straight. Looks like crap. I look by where the daycare was. Looks like crap. I look behind me and stuff. And granted, they were doing the construction on Allison Road and stuff, which looks pretty awesome and stuff. They did a really, really nice job there and stuff. But it's crap back there. Sooner or later, we're going to have to make a decision here on what we're going to do with this property. Unfortunately, I know people on Pine Haven where that kind of retaining wall is and stuff. But you bought the house there with that retaining wall already there. You were looking out at a trailer park, all decapitated units or whatever and stuff. I feel for them. But it is what it is. I mean, if it's this gentleman that's gonna do a project, if it's 10 other different guys that are gonna try to do this project, something has to give here. I mean, it looks horrible. I don't know if any of you have been down to Oak Haven and know where my house is and stuff. I loved it when the daycare was there because it brought life to that area and stuff. Was there traffic? Yeah, there was traffic. In the morning, afternoon, lunchtime, at the end of the day, were people speeding up and down the road and stuff? Yes, they were. Is it nice how it is right now with really no traffic? Yes, it is. I have my son and that brings my two granddaughters over there from his house because it's safer for my granddaughter, which is, she's permanently deaf. He could put the helmet on and stuff. He doesn't have to worry, or she doesn't have to have the hearing things. So in that regard, that's great, you know, but we got to give here. I mean, we're trying to please so many people, and with all these ideas of what we should do or whatever and stuff. I mean, not that it's nonsense, but when is this going to stop? The plan up here looks awesome. I mean, you know, they're going to have to tweak it or whatever and stuff. Oak Haven is on the small side. 2 cars can't pass at the same time and stuff. Is there going to be some traffic there and stuff? Yes, there's going to be. But I mean, we got to do something here and stuff. This isn't, not that it's not right and stuff, but it's not right for me. All right, because you see what I'm living around. I don't have a Taj Mahal or anything fancy or anything like that. What I have is what I have. And it looks like hell. So please, can we come up with some kind of a compromise, work with this gentleman or something? Something's got to give. So please, you know, any kind of help I would appreciate, because nobody in this room or anywhere else on the internet or anything like that that's part of the group live with what I have. So please, you know, can I get a little bit of help here? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitcomb. Anybody else that would like to speak?
Yes.
How you guys doing? Eric Hartman, 328 Cottage Farm Drive. I have been here for about 3 years. I moved from New York down to here because I like it here. And unfortunately, we see some of the same mistakes that were made up where we are from being made down here. The main thing that we're seeing is density, and that's the word that everybody's used, including these guys. Density is a problem. Once it gets past a certain point, it causes issues, causes traffic. And the problem with this is the density. You know, I'm just looking at this with fairly fresh eyes. It's a lot of units, man. It's a whole lot of units. I know that a lot of people in here saw plans from before times that were huge. And this seems like a breath of fresh air compared to that, but this is a ton of stuff. As has been mentioned before, Allison Road is, even though there's a light there, it's not awesome. You see people getting stuck in Rebo Road all the time, trying to take a left and a right because somebody's going into the hospital parking lot. It's not their fault. They have to park there, often have to walk across and people stop. Somebody else brought up the turn lane. In order for that turn lane to work, it's got to go all the way back to Myrtle Street. Because you often do get people backed up there. And there's not a lot of traffic there now, you know, and it's already getting backed up. So a right onto Rebo and a right off of Rebo seems like that actually might make a lot of sense. Because I don't know if guys have ever tried to take a left onto Rebo lately. You can't do it unless there's a light there. This is a great space. And so I didn't mean to get up here and be negative to you guys right off the bat, and something is going to be done. I ride my bike around there a lot. It's beautiful, actually. But it just seems like, again, the density, the amount is the issue here. You look at Rebo Island, that's a pretty beefy development there. That's 25 units. This is 72. It's just severely out of character with the surrounding area. And we can get into finger pointing games, how the zoning changed and who did what and who didn't approve this and what was going on before COVID and all this stuff. But the fact of the matter is, this is a ton of units. And that's the main problem that everybody has. You know, workforce housing, I think we just put up 8,000 units of it on Robert Smalls. So I think we're good there for the next couple decades. I would just, you know, even with amazing architecture, this is gigantic development in an area that just doesn't have gigantic developments like this. The hope here would be for this to be slimmed down severely. I'd love personally to see single families here. I don't know how the zoning changed. I don't know how that happens. That's a mistake. But you know, as it is now, this is gargantuan, and I really hope that a compromise can be met, because I do agree with this gentleman. Something's going to be done eventually. I don't see this being given to the beautification project like Mr. Trask did before. But again, I really hope that that this can be slimmed down. And that's about it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anybody else?
We have a separate table for this sheet, by the way.
We do have a hand raised online, just so you're aware.
Let's go to the online.
I've given them permission to speak. They're still muted. Okay, well, I can't do anything. It's up to them to unmute.
Sometimes I have to wait for permission to speak from my wife too. Usually it doesn't take this long.
They may be having a technical difficulty, I suppose, but
Should we just note the person's name that they wanted to make a comment? And do you know their name, Tony?
yeah, according to Zoom, their name is iPhone.
iPhone.
I'm gonna go ahead and revoke the ability for them to speak. We tried. Might be my wife telling me that dinner's ready.
Okay, well, no luck yet on the internet, right?
No, sir.
Okay, so I guess I'll close public comment unless there is somebody else here that. Okay, so I'll close public comment. Would the applicant like to come and do a rebuttal?
Hi, Dan Kiefer again. Thank you, commission members. I think what we're looking for now, based on public comment or maybe some recommendations, how we move forward together on this. Obviously, we weren't ready to address the architecture. We don't have the buildings designed yet. If there were,
And again, I think what I was asking for was concept design. So you could use past projects as examples and give us some massing of what your intent is here. But these are large blocks of buildings, and they're going to be significant on the site. So from an architectural standpoint, I think that's what I would like to see, something that you can communicate as to where we're going. Because you're asking for our approval here, and it's going to go to staff to make decisions. This board is architects, engineers, some attorneys, but it's hard to give an approval without knowing any more than we know right now.
So, just so I understand where you guys are right now, are you, inclined to withdraw your request for approval today, but you're asking for some guidance to come back? Is that where you're at?
well, we were here seeking approval, maybe with some conditions that we could work with staff on. Now, I'm looking to Kurt for a second, just to, if we went down through the list. The list I have was the TIA, which is pretty black and white. I know Kurt has that. You know, we can provide that information. So that, and Kurt, you can speak up for how comfortable we are.
I mean, you've got
TIA,
TIA maybe to consider the new plan and or write in, write out. Is that what, or seems like there were three options talked about. Do you do a write in, write out and then restrict access on Oak Haven?
I
Do you
think I-
continue with the current plan,
But-
or do you?
I think we can address a lot of this in a motion if you let us do that. And we'll give you some guidance. And if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass, but we'll be here all night if we just try
Okay.
to work this out on the fly.
Yeah,
I'm
I
prepared
think
to
that's
give you some
probably a
guidance.
good idea, if that's okay. Unless you wanna, if you wanna withdraw it for now, and we can give you the items to address, or we could go ahead and take it to a motion of approval or denial
Or continuation.
or continuation, and give you all of the items that we have on our list right now.
Just note, this is just a public meeting, right? Our code doesn't require a public hearing for this. Let's testament to all the people that came here that, came to the meeting. But, what I'm trying to get at is, if they withdraw it now, it's not a big deal. They can just resubmit the plan, right away. So it doesn't need
Right.
to be renoticed or anything, so.
But what would you like to do?
We'll let you guys go ahead and proceed as you were, Mr. Bardenwerker recommended.
Okay, I'll look for a motion then. Or,
Out of the public discussion part.
yes, is there any other comment from the board before a motion?
But the reason I'd like to just recommend, we'll see where it goes, a motion is because I think we've been at it for 2+ hours and probably not going to get anywhere by just continuing to beat this. And I'll give a motion, and then if there's a second, then there might be friendly amendments to it, okay? So just as a couple sentence preliminary to making a motion is, from my viewpoint, we can't decide certain things till we have certain information that, may not have been what staff thought we needed. But some of us have been sitting on these whatever you call them, sketch plan cases or preliminary plat cases before, and we've been pretty clear about what we want to see. And so I don't want you all to feel that you did a deficient job. I see the pretty site plan, which I'll look at as a sketch plan, and I see then what is clearly labeled as, you know, preliminary plat documents. And there's a lot of detail on there that I'm not sure people are fully aware of. Although I don't think all of the detail is on there or included in the application that really is important. So our recommendation by virtue of this motion is to continue this public hearing to a date, either certain or uncertain, leave it up to you all when you want to come back. Prior to which the applicant should submit to staff a revised sketch plan with the following details to be presented and discussed at the continuation hearing. First is the updated TIA, which apparently you have, looking at nearby intersections. I don't know what intersections you looked at other than Rebo and Allison, but or that need to be looked at, but maybe they're already there. And in that TIA, we won't need to see it in all its glorious detail, but we will want to see what the generation and distribution numbers are. Not just the generation, but the distribution. And then with the levels of service, including the seconds of delay. That'll give us a sense of whether that single intersection of Rebo and Allison are operating correctly, or whether others like it need to have some improvements such as turn lanes. Number two would be include on that the building mass and concept design of the townhomes, as the chairman has said. Also, number three would be the building setbacks and limitation that you would propose on building heights. Number four would be the plans, if any, for screening of property perimeters. Number five would be a topographical overlay, because I don't think that's on the preliminary plat. Number six would be, I don't see on your preliminary drawings the stormwater arrows. I see where the catch basins are and the detention basin, but I don't see how the storm flow gets to those catch basins. And with those arrows, we'll also then know whether you have any of that flow going to offsite properties, because it really should be all retained on site. And then all the stormwater outlets, I do see those on that preliminary plat, but I don't know if you do intend any bioretention ponds. If not, it's up to you. We in the end might have views on that, but if you do propose anything like that, show it. Right now I just see a detention basin. I think the chairman told me he would like to see a fire marshal letter. Those are the things on my list. I would like to just say as part of this motion that to the extent that you, because the sketch plan approval you have said that you needed to bring your preliminary plat to this planning commission. It doesn't bother me if you put some of this stuff on a preliminary plat and some of it on the revised sketch plan. But I don't think this, if you come back just with a revised sketch plan, you need to show minimally the things that we show here. And you may choose not to go to the final preliminary plat documents, because you may not want to invest all of that at this point in time. But if you want to show up with both of them at the same time, that's entirely up to you. Otherwise, do it in a two-step process. And that would be my motion. If there's a second, then maybe somebody will have, you know, some friendly amendments for what they'd like to add to the items I have.
Should we be making the friendly amendment before there's a second or afterwards?
After, but I guess you want to make clear that your motion is a continuation.
Right.
And if you're looking for a straight up approval or disapproval, that would be different. But judging from our conversation, it sounds like you'd be looking for a continuation, as you said, so that you could work this out.
I'll give it,
We'll get it, we'll get it to you. No, I saw you struggling with that. We will get it to you. Trust
Yeah,
me.
you'll get all that.
I agree.
Yeah, that's all I was asking. Okay, so I'll ask for a second to the motion.
Second.
All in favor of the motion signify by raising your.
We might have.
I had a couple of,
All right,
based on some of the public comment, you may want to, as part of this further submissions, consider adjustments to the overall density of the project, meaning number of lots, and also reconsider the issue of access on Rebo Road.
And I would accept both of those as friendly amendments, but only in the context of consider the density. You know, that's ultimately up to you, what kind of level of density you want to bring forward and make your best case on. Like, I'm not, in my motion, it's not telling you to. It's saying as, you might want to consider it just from what you heard, that's all.
Yeah, and that's what I stated.
When we finish the motion. So I have an amendment to the motion, so
I'll accept those just as a friendly amendment.
okay.
If the second accepts them.
Somebody needs to second.
Does the second accept that friendly amendment?
Accepted.
I
Okay,
think that's fine.
all in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand,
Aye.
and it's unanimous. So, yeah, please go ahead if you have something.
The sign-in paper's not here.
Oh,
Where is the sign-in paper?
Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm Larry Paragano. I am at 1124 Park West Boulevard, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. So I've heard a lot today. I want to make a couple of clarifications, and it's, for what it's worth, I did not know of a Haven collective. I just didn't know. Candidly, I think I have a little bit of a halo effect here because I'm not Sam Levin. He doesn't own the property. I own the property now. So I'm not exactly sure. I do know of the gyrations that this property took. I know it started originally as a 5-story apartment building. I know that at one point or another, Ms. McFan mentioned that it was going to be a parking garage. I know that there was office and retail.
I think I got it.
I know there was a daycare proposed, a new daycare proposed on that building on up Allison Road, which was approved. And then we have scaled this back tremendously. The initial plan was for 84 townhouses, or I should say it was 76 townhouses, a 4-plex and 3 duplexes. So we have backed off of that tremendously.
I believe that's about 240, if I remember right.
The original apartments were 240. Now, I appreciate Mr. Saccone's position that at some point we just need to do something. It's time. I don't think a TIA is going to yield anything different now than it did before. This is dramatically reduced from a 50,000-foot office building, a 10,000-foot daycare, and 42 townhouses or multifamily dwellings. So, but
And
You'll-
just understand, that our problem, mine in particular on this, but I think the entire commission see a little back on it. Without that, we just don't know. And we have made it clear to our staff, and unfortunately, and we'll make it clear, is we just want to see the report, and it may be exactly as you say, but we haven't seen it, so we don't know.
well, you could take a look. I mean, there's the bigger problem that I'm seeing here today is twofold. The first one is your zoning provides for 5-story development. Okay. I'm enough of a realist. I'm not putting 5 stories. I'm not putting 4 stories. And there may be some 3 stories in there. I can't speak. At the juncture at which this was given to me was about a week and a half ago, where we now want to discuss architecture. Well, the gyrations that this thing has gone through, I have not hired an architect, and there will not be an architect at the next meeting that can answer your questions. I've taken it under advisement, as your staff has asked me to do, and I'll continue to take it under advisement. There is a significant elevational challenge here. It was our intent not to necessarily go 3 stories if we can get garages under. And because of the slope of everything, perhaps it's a 1/2 story. I don't know. By your own ordinance, all of these townhouses need to be 3 feet above anyway. It's almost a 1/2 story, as it were. But I'm not just going to agree to 2 stories. I want to see how it plays out. with an architect. I am not an architect. If he can design something that's satisfactory, that's great. Happily do so. But the bigger problem I'm seeing here, and this is the one that, you know, Mr. Levin, when he sold it to me, told me the same issue. The city and the neighborhood are not on the same page with access to Reboat Road. So the city came to me about 2 weeks ago and said to us, we want you to close off Reboat Road. It was a very difficult decision to make, but we agreed to do it. And now it looks like the neighbors don't want it, they want it, they don't want it. I'm a ping pong ball here. I just want to pick a route and go with it. I think the opportunity to have an acre park, and by the way, I'll donate the land to the town. I don't, to make a park, if that's what they want. I don't need private park. But I don't even mind if we put a gate up along Oak Haven that'll prohibit the traffic and strictly goes out Allison Road. I don't care. What I do care is that at some point, a decision needs to be made. I'll go either way. So as far as I'm concerned, those are my concerns with this. I think the density is appropriate. I do. It could have been 240 apartments at the end of the day. I want to also remind you that you can put in the back of your head, 66 trailers, 3 houses along Allison Road, and a daycare. That's 70 units. So when you asked about water capacity, Beaufort Jasper already has 70 connections. So it's there. I just have been waiting. There's no purpose for me to go to Beaufort Jasper until I have what's the preliminary plan sketch. I don't even, candidly, I'm sorry, I don't know the difference between a plan and a sketch. And perhaps you could share that, or somebody could share that with me. I don't know what the level of approval means on that, but all we want to do is get through the turnstiles here so that we can go ahead and get the engineering done and get the architecture drawn. Thank you for your time. You need me to sign in?
Thank you.
Could I ask a question and kind of like a suggestion, maybe? It sounds like people, the neighborhood and the existing Oak Haven Street does not want to connect to the new Oak Haven Street. But yet here we are connecting, and you want to connect to Rebo, which I think is what makes the most sense, in my opinion, connecting all that density, straight to that main road. So I'm kind of not opposed to the idea of going back to connecting Oak Haven to Rebo and having the dead end between the old Oak Haven Street and the new Oak Haven Street, and maybe still kind of having some kind of, somebody mentioned a pedestrian connection. And that way, all the traffic is not going through you guys' street. It's just going to go straight out to Rebo. And I agree, with the neighborhood about, not just reducing the height of the buildings flanking the single-family homes, but also maybe looking at reducing the footprint. So maybe doing a duplex or a triplex on those areas. That's basically just what I'm hearing, from everybody.
I just want to say, I appreciate your frustration. And I think it's absolutely fair to you to give you some kind of decision about what we're going to do sooner rather than later. I understand that, and I am completely, I'm with you there. I understand that completely, and I think that would be fair to you. Now, that said, this is our home. For you, this is just another project, but this is our home. And I don't get a sense from you that you're at all concerned or a whole lot concerned about the concerns of the people who are going to be living next to this. But you're going to finish this, you're going to go on to your next project in Mount Pleasant or, wherever. But I just want you to keep that in mind.
With all due respect to the contrary, I think by reducing this from 240 down to 72, I am showing a respect for the community. I'm also leaving it, I'm not thrilled with the idea of going back onto Rebo Road as a right in, right out. But I think that addressed a lot of the concerns of the neighborhood. I think giving them a gated or leave it as a dead end, I don't, and we'll just do from our thing. I think that addresses the concerns of the community. You know, I know developers get a bad rap. I get it. I'm trying to fit a need into a market that is not here. You don't have townhouses in this community. So I stayed away from single family. I think that the yield is certainly worthy of what we've designed. And I do think ultimately, if you were to take a look at this plan, that the original approvals for the 42 units were actually quite similar in design and scope to what was originally approved. So we're not trying to rewrite the wheel, recreate the wheel. Quite frankly, I think it's a step down in density from the 50,000 and the 10,000 foot of daycare. So I know developers get a bad rap. I understand. I appreciate where you're coming from. You can take a look at what I do. I am concerned. Trying to do the right thing here.
I'll just say, I appreciate what you've done, and I don't want to go any farther in this. I think
Yeah.
we've already done the ruling, and we want to go.
And we have a lot of attorneys here, so I think we need to stop
Yeah,
making
and,
comments on the project.
and I
That's not
appreciate what you've done and worked with the staff, and I appreciate the fact that you're willing to work with us to get to the right solution. So I thank you very much for that. Good dead end. Okay, so guess we'll move on to old business. And that is the development code. And thank you for the neighbors and stuff that came and sat through all this. Appreciate your coming and doing that. So we'll move on to the Beaufort Development Code changes. We tabled that and took it up at our last planning session. And I guess I would look for a motion to just continue that to our next planning session, which is Monday.
Yeah, I would move that we do not discuss chapter 5 any further until we have concluded our work session that is scheduled for Monday. That is another extended work session that we hope to get through chapter 5 on.
And I don't know that I need a motion on that, Kurt. Can we just say we're continuing it? The problem we have is we tabled.
Yeah, I
it
think
last
you
time.
can just continue it. That's fine.
Okay, so we're just going to continue that until Monday, March 24th at 1 o'clock. For those that are interested,
What date was that?
It's next month.
March 24th, this coming Monday
Yes, 1 o'clock.
at 1 o'clock.
And if anybody is interested, again, we really do appreciate getting any citizen comments in writing well in advance of that session. You're always welcome to come and make live public comment, but we have found that having the written comment in advance makes a big difference.
Okay. Anything else, Kurt?
Yes, so I think we mentioned it maybe at the work session, but if not, it was mentioned at the HDRB. It was brought up at the strategic planning session. That is a joint meeting between the HDRB and the Planning Commission to go over the Chapter 9 changes you made last year that have not been acted on. The HDRB agreed to come to your next regular meeting, which is, I think, April 21st. I think, I should have looked at that before I walked up here, but.
April 21st is Easter Monday.
Okay,
Is that going to happen?
that is your next meeting. So if you would rather not meet on April 21st, No, that's our next, we haven't changed that date.
So this is going to be done at our next regular meeting as opposed to a work session.
That's correct.
That's what they asked for. was
Okay.
a
Oh, that's fine.
Public session instead of a work session.
Okay. Just in light of that, I don't know if there are other agenda items on there.
Right now, there's not, except for, I don't know if they'll be back, next month, but, I mean, we have some things like the car wash and stuff, but we haven't had any communication with them in some time, and, yeah, we don't really have anything. Oh, we have a rezoning, on the agenda. So we do have a rezoning, but I wouldn't say it's terribly complicated.
Okay, so I would like to see that we leave plenty of time for this meeting with the HRB, because there's a holdup there on code amendments that the city council is waiting for. So if we can make sure we have plenty of time to do that and maybe not schedule any other agenda.
Well, there's just one other agenda item.
I mean,
So there's-
besides what you've already scheduled.
Well, can we request them to submit whatever changes in writing to us so that we can look at them beforehand?
we can request it. I think it's more intended as a kind of discussion type of.
Or maybe, or
I'd-
just outlining the.
I'd much rather have something concrete from them that we can talk about, because I'm very terrified that that would just turn into a lot of circular conversations and we wouldn't get anything done. So it would be really nice if they could give us something we could look at.
Even just a list.
Well,
Yeah.
even if it's a discussion item, tell us what the discussion item is.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll send that to them, but I think I'll do my best. You're two different boards with two different ways of doing things, so.
They intending
You
to
know.
go through the entire chapter 9? Specific items that they're concerned with.
So I guess to back up here, and again, you're two different boards with two different, purviews, right? This came up at the strategic planning session. There was concern from city council that, I think that they felt like the HDRB was not part of that process. So was sent, you did send them your recommendations, but we didn't receive any comment. But however, I think they felt like they should be more, or there was just a feeling that maybe they should be more part of that process.
If it
Comment.
would be okay, I have a suggestion, and I don't know if it'll be okay, so I'm kind of asking you, Kurt. Would it be helpful if our chairperson, Mr. Tomey, reached out to the HRB chair and maybe asked for a list, or, said, what are you guys planning? Something like.
Yeah, I mean, we could set up a meeting with them. I mean, that would be fine. That could be something we could do in the meantime.
You can be the moderator,
Yeah, I mean.
Bring your gavel.
referee. Yeah, just to reiterate what I had said before was, they had indicated that they wanted to go ahead, take what we had submitted already, make the changes to what we did and send that on to city council, which I said, no, I think we need to have a session, put all the comments final together and then give it to city council.
Right, because we need to make the final recommendation, and there may be some
Legally.
things that they want that we do not agree with. So I agree with your analysis there for sure.
Well, I'm sure we will agree with everything they would want.
So how do you feel about reaching out to the chair and seeing?
Well,
if-
I don't have a
I can
problem
do
if
that.
you wanna,
I'll reach out and try to set up something with maybe
I
the
could like
vice
to get
chairman,
together and-
want to be in. Paul
I think that's a good idea.
okay, that's fine.
If you like, okay, I'll set that up tomorrow. Would you like the vice chairmans to be involved or not?
Sure, that'd be
Okay.
great. If he's available.
Yeah. Okay, all right, sounds fine. That's all I have.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
seconded,
Second.
adjourned.